and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage John Pagliuca, President, Chief Executive Officer, Enable.
Whoa, pretty good. See, you guys met my wingman. How do you do, all right? Welcome, thank you. First, I want to give a shout out to our partners, actually situated right here in the front row. Nice to see you guys. IT by Design. They're the group who, and their creative marketing team were the ones who put this graphic together when we did the show with them. And many of you may or may not know, but Enable and IT by Design partnered earlier this year to a little bit of get together. Why? Because even an MSP needs an MSP sometimes. So spend some time with Sonny and his team and walk by their booth and see what they can do to help augment your needs and go from there. Great to see. I can't believe it's been 3 years. 3 years. Great to see some of the old faces. I say old because, let's face it, we're kind of getting collectively older together, but it's okay. We're getting older together. A little less hair this year than there was 3 years ago in Atlanta, right? Great to see some of the new faces. I know what you're thinking. He looks a lot taller on the videos with Joey Pants, right? So, and by the way, Dave and I did not organize short jokes together, but I got him by a little bit. But anyway, so really great to see some of the faces. This is all about you. Empower is, as Dave mentioned, here for you. Hopefully you'll get some information, some knowledge from this stage and from the breakout sessions. I'm confident you will, but the real secret, the real magic of Empower is the conversations that you have with one another. But here's the thing, like many things in life, you get out of it what you put into it. So this is a contact sport. I need you to engage. I need you to have conversations with one another. We're all in the industry together, as Dave mentioned, and everything we can do to make one another better, share your victories, share your approaches, share your losses. I love to always use the famous Nelson Mandela statement internally at Enable. We either win or we learn. So let's share some of those learnings with one another as we go through. I'm going to do three things. I'm going to walk you through a view of the global economy and what we're seeing out there at a high level. I might drop the R word once in a while, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to talk to you about 3 wins that are circling the globe and what we can do about that. You're going to be familiar with all of them because we've been living with these wins for well over a decade. And then lastly, I'm going to bring to the stage a couple of experts to talk a little bit about those wins, and that's going to be Mike Cullen and Dave McKinnon. First of all, do we recognize these folks? We know their name? Blue Angels, great. So let's see if you're paying attention. Air Force or Navy? Not too bad. Not on the video. Roughly guess how many years these folks have been flying around? About 76 years, pretty impressive. Last question, what plane? What's the plane? F-18. So trick question, you're probably right on that answer, but the Blue Angels are actually not the plane. The Blue Angels are actually the pilots, right? So that's really what the Blue Angels are. It's not the plane, it's the pilot, right? It's not this fantastic machinery. It's not the science and the tooling that makes the Blue Angels. It's the person in the cockpit, right? Sound familiar? Because effectively you all are the pilots. You all are effectively the Blue Angels. It's really you who are charting the course for your company, for your teams, finding the strategy, finding the tactic, understanding the drive of the business. You are the ones making the decisions. You're also the ones carrying out the task, the assignment for your clients, making sure that they're successful, making sure that they're productive, making sure that they're safe, because we also know you all and Enable, the entire industry, is squarely in the crosshairs of the bad guys, right? So you're charting your course, staffing challenges, technology solutions, customer challenges, making sure your customers can be productive while defending. Quite the mission. Quite the mission. Not for the faint of heart, as they say, right? But it's you all that determine whether or not there's going to be success or not. So here's the good news. If you're successful in navigating and carrying out this mission, you will gain entrance to the platinum era. I'll talk about that in a second. However, it's a little bit stormy outside, and a little bit of a misstep and a lack of focus and a lack of execution could wind your company, your customers, your personnel in a little bit of a spot that maybe we might not see you next year. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so in my times with speaking with as the CEO of a publicly traded company, I spend a lot of time talking to Wall Street. Not my most fun part of my job, but in doing so, whether it's investors, whether it's researchers, they always ask me about the trends, the market, and what we see. Now with a couple of things looming, they're asking about how recession-proof is the MSP community. I often tell them, I don't believe anything is really recession-proof. I think that's kind of a dumb way to think about it. The good news is the MSP industry is very recession resilient, and that's the key. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the tailwinds in a second, and really, as a result of these tailwinds, many of the folks in Wall Street, many of the folks in private equity, we can talk about that now or in other sessions, many of the folks that are investing in the community have deemed this the platinum era. The last time we got together, we were in the golden era. And we've been upgraded, folks. Congratulations, you probably didn't even know you got the upgrade. And the reason for that is that we have these three tailwinds: the transformation and the cloud transformation, cybersecurity, and labor scarcity, all are coalescing and providing a tailwind for you all to grow your recurring revenue business. And in doing so, we're elevating and increasing our TAM, our total addressable market, which gives you a tremendous amount of opportunity, hence the promotion. So congratulations. Give yourself a round of applause. You're now in the platinum era. Check inside your backpacks. There's a little, no, there's not, but budget constraint now. So anyway, but not all is rosy, right? We talk about climate versus weather. And you can sit here and say, hey, John, what are we talking about? You have all these tailwinds. Aren't you reading the news, right? And we see scary words that are flying around the news, right? We hear words like inflation, high single-digit inflation in the US, higher in other parts of the economy. We see crazy fluctuations in FX, right? The sterling and the euro and all these crazy bits having impact on CapEx spend and overall supply chain. We're seeing the cost of money increase, right? The cost of capital has gone up. The decade of basically free money that we all were experiencing with those low interest rates, unfortunately, they're over, right? Right now in 2022, we are experiencing the highest increase of cost of capital in the history of our nation. What is that going to do? That's going to have an impact. Interestingly enough, and I promise I didn't start it, there was a Reddit thread yesterday that brought this topic up. Any of you folks follow Reddit? All right, you don't want to admit it? Okay, so I won't tell you my handle. I have a secret handle. But anyway, so I get on there and check. And the MSP that started it said, hey, we're starting to see a slowdown. Is this the beginning? Are we feeling the impact of the recession? And it was really interesting. I actually, because I had some time, went through a lot of the comments. And it was basically about a 50-50 split. Half the audience, half the thread, were experiencing slowdown. They were experiencing pricing pressure. They were experiencing an elongated sales cycle. But the other half was saying, no. You know, services are flying off the shelf, so to speak. We're busier as ever. My biggest problem is labor scarcity. And it's interesting because I do believe that we're all interconnected. And I do believe that some parts of the markets, whether it be a geographical concentration or a vertical concentration, will feel some of these inflationary and recessionary type of movements and pressures in the short term and medium term, and then it will cascade. So you might be in that first deviation or that second deviation, but ultimately this will impact all of us, and we need to be mindful, and we need to be in a preparation mode. Yesterday I was talking to one of an MSPs, and he asked me, he said, hey John, the last financial crisis, in the housing crisis, 2007, 2008, what did we learn from that? What can we learn from that? I thought it was a great question that happened to be in my talk track, so I was glad that we're in there. But I'm going to provide a little bit of guidance. I'd call it good financial hygiene as to what you should do in preparation for the unknown. And a lot of these things are not in our control, but the items that I'll have here are definitely in your control. So here's the list. I'll go through them one by one. Number one, hit the books. Hit the books. What am I talking about? Go to school? No. Look at your financial statements. Look at your financial books. Understand your balance sheet. Understand your accounts receivable. Understand your debt structure. Take a clear look at your balance sheet. Understand where your costs are. When capital gets more expensive, some of our debt's variable. This is both for your personal finances and your work finances. Make sure, do you know that if your debt is a fixed rate or a variable rate? And what is the fluctuation there? Because as that moves and as capital increases, it's going to put pressure on your cash flow. It's going to put pressure on your balance sheet. Make sure you understand who your profitable customers are. Trust me when I tell you, many of you have unprofitable customers as well. Understand the base of your business and go from there. Second thing, and this might not be that intuitive, think about actually securing more debt. I don't believe debt is a four-letter word, and it doesn't mean you need to use it. But before the storm hits, it makes a lot of sense to make sure that you have an extended line of credit that you can leverage if in case you need to pull on that, if in case your financial situation worsens. Typically speaking, recessions last between 6 to 18 months. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but if it does, and if you need to pull on some of that, build that cushion, that parachute in now, secure the debt. The third one, probably one of my more favorite expressions in business, I think it's a Jack Welch-ism. Someone can look it up and correct me later, but it's planning. So failing to plan is planning to fail. Period. Period, period, period. We're at the end, we're in October of 2022, and Abel, much to the chagrin of most of my team, is very much in planning season, right? We're looking at our forecasts, we're making sure that we can understand how we're gonna grow our business. Are you doing that? Are you building your financial plan? Do you understand your growth algorithm? In a down cycle, how can I grow my business? It's cheaper to expand your existing customer base than attract new customers in a recession, as an example. Build your plan, build a contingency plan, understand what verticals and where your customers are that might be a little bit more susceptible to a down cycle. The retail space, the hospitality industry, never Vegas. Vegas is recession. That's the one that's recession-proof. But understand where you are and look to build an appropriate plan and a contingency plan. My favorite two words in the space, standardize and optimize. Certain things are outside of our control. Certain things are absolutely in your control, folks, right? You'll be hearing a lot talking about automation. If you want to increase your EBITDA, if you want to increase your profits, and by the way, when the cost of money goes up, cash is king. Cash should always be king, but when money is more expensive, cash is definitely king. What can you do to drive that EBITDA higher? Standardize your tech stack, automate, standardize your service offerings, standardize your service support. Everything you can do to standardize makes your teams more efficient, allows your team to drive to a higher type of strategic initiative, and drives bottom line appreciation, period. You can control that, take a look and do that. And then lastly, in down cycles, discretionary spend and vendors that are deemed more of a commodity get put under pressure. What can you do right now so that your customers understand that you are a strategic partner? Remind them of their cyber hygiene. Remind them of the value add that you bring. Be that strategic partner. Ask the question, what are they doing for their planning exercise? What can you do to help them bring down their costs and automate some of their business? What are they doing for CapEx? Can we move them to the cloud? Talk about that in a second. These are all the bits that we can do to prepare for some of the turbulence that may hit us today or may hit us down the road. But in any case, they're the right business hygiene steps that you need to do as business leaders in the cockpit to make sure your businesses are successful. And look, I believe effectively the weather outside may impact us to one degree or another. These are the steps to bring a raincoat, but ultimately, the climate is quite strong. And if you do the right steps in times to prepare yourself on the downside, you will come out of this stronger, more profitable, and being able to gain market share and expansion in your business. And this is all about turning headwinds into tailwinds. I learned about the Blue Angels. I didn't really know much about the Blue Angels. And I learned a little bit about aviation. Did you know, my guess is most of you did, but I didn't, that when planes take off, they actually turn into the headwinds before they can get going? We got some bunch of head nods there, right? And so that's what really a good amount of my talk is really going to be about, and effectively making sure that we can take some of these winds that are circulating. I'm often been quoted in saying, these winds have been circulating. It's up to us. If we position our shoulders the right way, or the wrong way, excuse me, it will be a headwind. Position our shoulders the right way, these winds become a tailwind, driving you ahead of the competition, gaining market share, increasing your profits, and driving your business. I'm not going to say it's that simple, but a lot of times it's that simple. Here at Enable, we do two things. Boil it down. We do two things to make money. Number one, we give you a purpose-built platform that help you scale, that help you standardize, to help you be more efficient, to drive that profitability up. That's number one. Number two, we hope to either build or partner and bring you enterprise-grade software that you can grow your top line, expand your service offering. That's it. We're here to help you grow your top line. We're here to help you grow your bottom line. It's clean living. It's pretty much that simple. So our strategy effectively has three pillars to it. We want to help you manage everything, whether it be a workstation, a desktop, a server in a closet somewhere, or workloads in the cloud. We want to provide you the ability to manage everything and help you with that cloud tailwind. We want to help you secure everything, whether it be your workstations, your users, your data, or your customer data. And lastly, we want to enable you, pun intended. You guys got the joke with the name before, right? So enable you to meet your successful journey. And what might be true for you, or might be true for you, is different from some of the other folks. We will meet you and where you are in your journey. So let's talk about a couple of these wins and where we can go from there. Why have we gone to these great lengths and all these terrible cloud puns, Zeus, and all the aviation bits? It's really because of the focus on the cloud. Here's a fun fact for you. By 2027, the SME businesses, your customers, will spend $1 million. No, I'm kidding. $1 trillion. I was going to do the thing, but I did. $1 trillion. $1 trillion by 2027 in the cloud, right? That's the opportunity. Who's going to bring it to them? Some of them are going on their own. They're using SaaS applications. They're pushing on that front. But are they doing it right? Are they doing it safely? Are they managing it correctly? The opportunity is in front of you, and you need to be deliberate, and you need to be explicit. Take a look at the logos on the screen behind me. My guess is you recognize all of them. And they're at different points in the market. And the point here is understand where the adoption is, understand what's going on in your customer environments, and lean in to where the adoption is. Focus on the adoption, but be deliberate. Quick story. An MSP, this is a true story. I'm on a plane flying to Austin, Texas. And I'm sitting there, and there's a couple of folks sitting next to me, and they're talking. And I was like, oh, snap, they're an MSP. So we're talking, and I said, oh, are you an MSP? They're like, no, we're not, I'm not an MSP. And they're talking, and I'm like, oh, excuse me, and they didn't recognize me at first. And like, excuse me, but it sounds like you're an MSP. No, we're not an MSP. I was like, okay. So I'm like, so what do you, we're a cloud, we do cloud transformations. I was like, okay. But we use Datto. I'm like, oh, that's why you're not an MSP. You're using Datto. No. But anyway, so in my conversation, we got talking, we started talking about their industry, and they stumbled upon something. They began doing cloud transformations for their customers and moving them to the AWS stack. It wasn't an explicit strategy, it was an emerging strategy, but they began to focus on more and more customers like this and began doing AWS transformations all across the globe, not in just Rochester, New York, but all across the globe. And what ended up happening is AWS began pushing them leads. And because they became deliberate, they went from a stumble or an accident, kind of like penicillin, to a more deliberate strategy to grow their AWS business. They grew their business 83% year over year as a result, right? So they were deliberate about the adoption. They found out where the adoption was, the characteristics of that, and they distinguished themselves from the rest. And when you think about what's going on here, there are different parts of the life cycle, right? There are different stages of adoption. Be deliberate about where your customer base is, where they can be, and focus on that adoption. It's Empower, so I need to do this. We're gonna do a show of hands thing. So by show of hands, and keep them up, we'll get you fatigued on we'll work the shoulders this morning. Who here is comfortable with managing on-prem infrastructure and making sure that they can monetize it, that they can be efficient in driving all the on-prem infrastructure that they have? I'm hoping we get a good number of, all right, decent, good. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up, come on, you can do it. Who here is comfortable? Thank you, appreciate that. That gentleman here just gave me the cool, I like that. Keep your hand up if you're comfortable with M365 migrations and pushing from the server, from the Exchange server to the cloud. That's what I figured, okay. And what we're finding is most do. Some had probably a couple of scrambles with Exchange servers that they had in the last couple of days. Hopefully not as many. Okay, now remember, we're in Vegas, so whatever happens in Empower stays in Empower. Keep your hand up if you're comfortable with cloud infrastructure migrations and being able to monitor, manage, and secure the infrastructure in the cloud. Saw some hands go down, but actually pretty good. This is the upper quartile, right? Let's face it, this is a better group. Put your hands down. But thank you. What we find is about 1 out of 5 MSPs across our 25,000 MSPs that we have are comfortable with that journey. Some of you are in different parts of this adoption curve. When I ask, typically most MSPs say, hey, it's about high 90% of my customers we moved to M365 and we're leveraging that digital workload. When I ask about Azure and other infrastructure, that number drops to usually about 15 to 20%. My guess is from some of the head nods, you're in a very similar boat. How can we pull that up? How can you be strategic? And how can you push them along their journey? And what does it mean to you? My biggest bit of advice is focus on the work that is needed today, right? That MSP in Rochester, they identified a need, a business need. They had customers that had to upgrade their capital, had to upgrade their servers. They had customers that had a cost that they were trying to mitigate, and they were looking for a better solution. And they listened to their customer and began a cloud transformation exercise. Take a look at your customer base. Take a look at your prospects. Is somebody going through M&A? Is somebody gone through a breach? Is some of your customers looking to mitigate or offload some of their CapEx spend? Are they looking for a refresh? These are all opportunities that you can go in. This is old school MSP 101 stuff, right? We go in with a key project. We deliver that project. We show efficiencies to that customer. And we wrap a managed service around it, and we build it. Embracing these workloads, whether it's an AWS stack, the Azure stack, or some of these other workloads that were on the screen, will determine how successful you are in the years to come. Because if you're not explicit about it, and it's an emerging strategy, you're not more explicit about what's going on in your customer base, you're leaving the door open for somebody else to provide a service. You're leaving the door open for the customer not to see the value that you can provide. Lastly, on cloud, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this, the game has somewhat changed, right? People automatically think, hey, it's in the cloud, it's secure. And in some ways, it's true. But in other ways, the surface area and the attack vector has pivoted, right? Might not have a ransomware attack, but privileged access, right? Making sure that the systems are configured right, that it doesn't have an exploit in the way that you're being configured is important. We have a bunch of vendors here. Make sure you go to the Expo Center. I don't know if you guys checked it out yet, but that booth, that whole area looks fantastic. We have a bunch of vendors here that can walk you through what's necessary to make sure that you're secure in this cloud environment. You can talk to DMAC, our CISO, and make sure that you understand, as the surface area has changed, that you are protected. And then lastly, and we know, and I'll build this, the sky is crowded, right? You know the story. I think on average for a small medium enterprise, they have over 200 SaaS applications that they're running. At Enable, unfortunately, we have even more than that, right? So this whole shadow IT concept is there. Are you involved? Are you part of it? Are you helping them with their licensing? Are you helping them with their access? Are you helping them with their onboarding and offboarding of all these SaaS applications? If you're not managing everything. If you're not, you're leaving your customer exposed, you're potentially leaving money on the table for you to keep adding a service, and make sure that this is something that's contemplated as you do this. The push will continue. The data gets more and more disparate. How can you add value in pulling all the data to for your customers together, right? They're using Salesforce, they're using Marketo, they're using all these different SaaS applications. What can you do to help them? That's another way for you to advance that strategic partnership with your customers. So, understand the adoption, understand and be explicit about where you want to play, how you want to adopt, how you want to monetize, what are those events that you can go in and win, making sure that you're not ignoring the SaaS world and the shadow IT world, and that you're pulling everything in and managing everything, and be part of that $1 trillion opportunity that's going to be there in 2027. The second wind that's been circulating, we brought this up yesterday. Number one challenge facing MSPs, labor scarcity. Yes? True? Good. Well, not good, but glad to understand that we have an understanding of what's going on there. What can we be doing about that labor scarcity, and why, John, are you talking about this as a tailwind? We'll talk about that in a second. But it absolutely makes sense. That's true for you. That's true for Enable. And it's also true for your customers. Quick fun fact, of the top 5 reasons your employees will leave, only one is about money. Only one is about compensation. I believe in tech, that's definitely true. The other 4, it's all about development. It's all about what the type of quality of work that they're doing. Do they have a path? Are they learning, right? If you're in IT, you need to be learning. You need to be developing. You know, it's part of your journey. You are all still very inquisitive. You're still on that journey. You're still learning, I hope, day in and day out. So part of it is the comp, but a lot of it has to do with the development. And the way you can mitigate some of that is by taking the mundane tasks off of the team. Automate, automate, automate. You take the mundane tasks off of your team, you'll be able to scale and effectively do more with less, driving that technician to endpoint ratio even higher. Talk to one another. See what that ratio is. See how you compare. We can provide a little bit of that information as well. But I guarantee that you can do better if you leverage the tools that are there. At Enable, what I typically see is a bunch of MSPs are not fully embracing the total suite that we have to automate. Some of that's on us. Our UI could be a little bit better. But we're trying to do a bunch more to pull that to the front, but also educate. If you have some time, Mark Andre, one of the nerds that were up here, does a great automation session. Spend time with Mark, grab him at the bar, go to his breakout session. He will help you, I guarantee you, automate some tasks, drive some profitability. And by the way, there's another advantage. By automating, you're standardizing. And you can standardize that service delivery that you're giving to that customer. So they have that consistent SLA, driving that quality of service that we all want to make sure we're not losing the customer. Co-managed, who's heard of it? I'm kidding, yeah, right? So why is this such a big motion? Look, I've been in the industry now for 10 years. I can't believe it, but it's been an amazing decade. And when I first started, MSPs were typically servicing small, medium enterprises that were under 100 employees, and really 50 employees on down. I'm seeing some head nods, right? Today, in this room, there are MSPs servicing the Fortune 1000 companies today in this room. Names like Starbucks, Johnson & Johnson, publicly traded companies that are household names, are leveraging managed service providers in a way more than ever before. Why? Well, we've all grown up. The industry's matured. The technology's gotten better. Your businesses are stronger at scale. That's half of the equation. The other half of the equation is the labor scarcity that you all are suffering from and struggle with, and I suffer and struggle with. Guess what? Mid-market enterprises and Fortune 1000 companies are also struggling with this situation. when they look at the org chart, if you're a VP of IT, my favorite engineer is listed on the org chart. You know him. TBH. Do you have him on your org chart? To be hired, right? Well, guess what? They have that experience too. There's an opportunity for you to sell up market. I won't call out any names here, but the ones that are embracing that have doubled or tripled their average selling price to their customers as they go into bigger and bigger customers, a more educated customer sometimes that appreciates the full breadth of offerings that you can have, a stickier customer. So you're getting higher revenue, a stickier customer, and if you're in the market for M&A or in the market to potentially sell your business, your quality of earnings is going to be higher because when that buyer looks at shops that are coming from bigger shops, they're going to attribute a little bit more of a value to that number as well. It'll boost your growth, it'll boost your valuation, it will actually help you offset some of these risks that I talked about earlier. The challenge is you can't just show up and say, hey, Mr. or Ms. Head of IT, what can I do for you? You need to be explicit with the plan, whether it's a service area or a vertical that you're going after or some type of service. Come with a plan, be proactive, penetrate, I call it the tip of the arrow, and then land and expand these large accounts. If that's not part of your motion today, talk to me, talk to one of the folks, talk to some of the bigger shops that are in here that have been mastering this motion for the last couple of years, increasing their revenue, increasing their ASP, increasing their profitability. It's a tailwind. Labor scarcity is a tailwind. Leverage it the right way, embrace it, figure out how you can monetize it. The last tailwind, since 2016, we all know, we've all been living it, where WannaCry and some of the other ransomwares really started hitting the SME market. And cybersecurity continues to be a tailwind in our industry. It gives you an opportunity to be a strategic partner. It gives you an opportunity to provide a service that the SME market might not have been willing to afford, it didn't really appreciate, right? And we all know there's no magic purple pill, we brand it purple if we could, that makes your customers or your environment secure. So you need to deploy a layered security approach that's ever evolving, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, continuing to evolve, continuing to add offers to the security space. You all know it, you don't need me to tell you. We'll have more security experts here and around to help further that conversation. But two things I want to point out. Even the best pilot needs a wingman. Even the best MSP could leverage some security experts in one fashion or another. And depending on where you are in your journey, think about how you can either augment your service or your team with some of that. We have MSPs in this room that provide an augmentation service for security in this room. We have some vendors that also right outside in the expo room can also walk you through that. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Embrace it. The challenge is there, the challenge is real. Use it as an augment, provide a better level of security to your customers. And then lastly, and we're seeing this, I'd say, for the upper quartile of MSPs, security has gone from a sell to a tell. There's no reason why you should be really upgrading and upselling some of your security offerings. This should be more of a tell motion. The small, medium enterprise, your customer, is trusting you with the right security stack. You should be telling them and standardizing your security stack. It'll make them more secure. It'll help you standardize your business. It'll help you retain the customer. Because we all know when the proverbial shit hits the fan, they'll be looking to you. And if they're not deploying the security stack that you want, they're going to look to you for accountability. Make this a sell, not a tell. Use this as part of your growth algorithm for 2023 to grow your business and increase that ASP per customer. These are tailwinds, and collectively will help us and you grow and reach your goals for 2023. So with that, I'm going to bring a couple of experts into the conversation to talk a little bit more about these tailwinds, folks that are a little bit more experts in their field. So I'm going to bring to the stage Mike Cullen, the Godfather, and David McKinnon, DMAC, who's our CISO. Guys, come to the stage.